Francisco. A warm welcome to Hema. You may, just in passing, I'd like to mention you may post your questions in the chat box, and we'll try to cover all of them in the Q&A session after Hemlata ji's presentation. I now request Hema ji to share her presentation, Staying Positive.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Kaneshji, for that introduction, and thanks a lot, Manjri, for providing the opening. It's my pleasure to be here today to be speaking on staying positive. And I know we hear a lot about this, and so I thought maybe I could add my perspective as a mental health professional on what staying positive actually means. And I'm going to bring in my experiences from my workplace, my meeting with my clients. So I hope that this will be a value add session for all of you just to help us because we are all online and just to give us a visual understanding of what I'm saying. I would like to present along with the presentation, so I will be sharing my PowerPoint now, and if you're over your phones you may or may not be able to see it, but over the laptop I'm sure you should be able to see it. I'd also like to say that sometimes if you feel my voice is low or the internet is a bit disrupted, please be patient. My signal is very, very good. There should be no reason for that. But just in case it's something happening, we are so many of us, I think 22 to 25 of us on this online platform. So if it's anything like that, please be patient. But if it's taking longer than 3 minutes for you to come back, please let us know on the chat and I will check in if I need to make some changes at my end. As Ganeshji said, I'm also going to make this presentation interactive so you can have your responses on the chat. If you would like to unmute yourself and respond, you're welcome to do that also. There is no hurry to go through the entire presentation. My effort here would more be to interact with you and initiate a discussion that can really be of value to each one of us present here. So, on that note, um, I would like to begin with this quote that I found over the net and I found it very beautiful. So I thought I will share it in the session today. It is about saying that I know I have a good life. I know that I'm blessed. I'm grateful for the things I have. Really. But right now, in this moment, I am sad, and that's okay. So, when we speak about staying positive, many of us or the world generally thinks that we should only be talking about happiness, we should only be talking about good things, and that there is a kind of a pressure to always smile, always to never acknowledge a frown that comes on our face. But I would like to break that myth a little bit as we are starting off and say that positivity will not come magically. It is work, it requires some amount of understanding our own emotions and staying in touch with that. And on days knowing when we are happy, when we are sad, what brings us joy, what surprises us, and what shocks us. So, on that note, I would like to say that we will be talking today about all kinds of emotions, right? Because being positive is a journey that begins with understanding that one is not feeling okay. And what can help one feel okay is what positivity is about. Sorry, I'm just looking for my controls here. So I'd like to begin with this theory, which is very, very important aspect of understanding psychology, of understanding how our brains work, of understanding how our brain picks up information, and this is called as neuroplasticity. So neuroplasticity's general theory is that our brain is very, very young all the time, right? When we say we are aging, there's no like an old brain or a young brain. And we all know, it is researched, that we use hardly 10% of our brain. Maybe we were meant to, but that is what it is, as per research. So, the brain, this young brain in all of us, is always waiting to learn, is always waiting to understand something new, is always ready to carve out new habits, right? That is what neuroplasticity says. And this is research which says that neural pathways connect relatively distant areas of the brain or nervous system, and each pathway is associated with a particular action or behavior, right? So if we are exhibiting a certain behavior, then somehow the brain has connected that as the pathway, right? It is making some behavior cause effect connection and exhibiting that behavior. So many a times when we say we need to change something, I hear some of my clients say, oh, but I'm too old, or oh, but I've been doing this for so long, and or I'm so used to this, how can I give up on this, right? In terms of habits. So these are some things maybe which are part of our vocabulary also. However, science says, neuroplasticity says that this is not the brain's language. You need to stop and ask yourself, why are you using this language? Because your brain is always ready to carve out new pathways. If we repeat certain habits and if we practice certain habits, then they strengthen these pathways, and these habits are both good and bad. Okay. So when we are looking at a journey of positivity, we need some habits that will, like some rituals that will enable us to feel positive. Now, when I use the word rituals, most people then think, oh, is it something religious? No, rituals are some things that we do without giving up, like come what may, right? And that makes one feel better. So, as we keep practicing these habits, our old pathways get used less and they weaken, and the new pathways become stronger. So, what I'm saying is something that science believes in, that it is possible to give up any habit and to adopt any habit, right? But the interesting question is, why do we need habits? And I said it in one sentence in the previous slide, is because positivity is a journey. So when we speak about feeling positive, we need some tools, right? How do we move from one place to another, right? And what are these tools? These tools are our habits. What are we doing in our day to day life that one can move from feeling, I'll not say negative, but being in a difficult position to feeling more positive? So you may wonder why I've put the picture of an elephant there, but if you look very closely, this elephant is tied to a pole. You can see a chain around its leg, right? Sometimes we begin to believe that we are chained by our habits, and that is not a good sign, right? The moment we start saying, oh, but I cannot give up on this, it can be something as simple as coffee, right? The moment we begin to say, oh, but I cannot, I need it, I cannot do without it, so it's my habit, what to do? That is an indication that we are chained to that habit, and that we need to move away, because that is making us feel helpless, powerless, and making us seem like we are victims of the situation, while that is not true, right? Anyone looking at this elephant knows that this elephant is strong enough to break 10 such chains. But why does it remain chained to a very small weak pole? Because it believes so. It believes that it has to be in this difficult position to survive. It believes that it has to face these difficulties to survive, and that if it breaks the chain, life will become more difficult. Right? The fear of the unknown, right, keeps us sometimes in very, very difficult situations. So, the first thing to recognize when we speak about positivity is we need to move away from difficult situations. We have to work through difficult emotions, right? Otherwise, we will be like this elephant who's chained to a pole, and we are only thinking, right? Oh, I have to feel positive, I have to feel good, I have to smile all the time. And we can do all of that. This elephant does all of that. When someone comes, when a tourist goes, it takes the money, it blesses the tourist, and the tourist feels it is spreading happiness, right? The tourist is feeling so happy. But what is happening to the elephant? The elephant is still chained because it believes that this is its life. Right? So this kind of positivity from the outside, external positivity that is thrust upon us, is not helpful. And unless we work on ourselves to move through this difficult situation, we cannot feel positive from within. There is no point in feeling external positivity and feeling helpless from within. So, these are some simple habits which help us to be in touch with our emotions. And you can have any number. This is just something which I thought was interesting, and also in the introduction of Eklavya, we spoke. I mean, it was social support is a huge, and that's why as a group you're here. So this is something I call as a resilience diary, a diary that helps us to move through difficult times. And these are different prompts that one could use in their diary. One prompt could be to constantly understand and come back to this question of what is one's purpose in life. And we don't have to have one grand purpose. Our purpose can keep changing depending on our age. At 20, the purpose is different. At 30, it's different. At 60, it's different. And at 80, it can be very, very different, right? So to constantly reflect on one's purpose in life and to help people practice positive thinking in everyday life, right? That is the purpose of having this kind of a reflection on what is my purpose. And it can be also what is my purpose today, right? It need not be a purpose of 3 years, but what is my purpose today? So setting out every day with a sense of purpose, as as big or as small, as grand, whatever it is, whatever suits someone. Secondly, to experience gratitude, right? By probably every day writing three things that one is grateful for. It can be three, it can be five. My prompt is three. You do what suits you best. It can even be one, right? But just on reflection, trying to understand very realistically what do I feel grateful for today, and not in a forced manner, in a very organic manner. Sometimes I have my clients come back and say, I didn't feel grateful at all yesterday for anything. That's fine. That is the reality, and that also has to be made note of, right? Saying, I'm not feeling like that today. And that is being in touch with one's emotions, and that is important in this journey of positivity. Thirdly, to understand what is your social support, parents, siblings, in laws, spouse, partner, right? Children, right? Who are your social support? So, constantly keeping this social support around us, groups that meet up for social support. And this is very helpful in recalibrating difficult emotions. In moments when we feel life is challenging, these are some things that will help us build resilience. So I'd like to talk about this. I'm sure so long when I've been speaking about positivity, this is something would like to address is when sometimes I meet neurodivergent clients, right? I think whatever I've said so far is fine in a neurotypical environment. But in a neurodivergent environment, things can be very different, right? Their timelines can be different. Their sense of purpose can be different, right? And when we impose external positivity on them, it becomes very, very toxic, right? Because that time we are not sharing optimism, we are not sharing hope, but what we are doing is we are almost sharing some kind of a pressure on them, right, to meet certain timelines, like saying, you have to have a purpose, or saying, oh, where is your gratefulness diary, right? So, though there are habits and tools which can encourage positivity, it's also important to understand who we are dealing with, yeah, who we are working with, whom are we trying to support, right? And when that person is happens to be different in any way, in terms of neurodivergence, then to understand that these things, these factors, even the factor of neuroplasticity, which actually says that in 21 days we can pick up a new habit, great, but it may not apply to a neurodivergent population at all. And we need to understand that, right? So, optimism helps people cope, right? While when it becomes toxic positivity, it can make them feel worse. So, let us really draw that line, because here I understand many of us are also supporters and caretakers of a neurodivergent population. So then how do we ensure that we are not enforcing this kind of positivity on them. Because instead of providing hope, this can probably make them feel worse if we do not understand the difficult situation that they are in and work with that. I would like to share some examples from my practice, which across populations I've heard, not just neurodivergent population, but I've heard more of this from my neurodivergent clients. Right. So when they express that something is difficult for them, when they say that, I'm finding it challenging to feel positive, or I'm finding it challenging to smile all the time, or to keep at my habit, or to follow a particular ritual. These are the different things that they have been told. Sometimes they are told that look on the bright side, right? Everything happens for a reason. So some things like that, where they're being told that their condition is for a reason, or that they're going through something and there must be some big purpose to it and stuff like that. Sometimes telling them, or saying that happiness is a choice, right? When they say that I'm not able to feel happy, I'm not able to feel positive, then I hear that they are told that, oh, come on, happiness is a choice. I'm sure if you want to be positive, you can be positive, right? Sometimes being dismissed. Oh, it could be worse. What are you crying about? Don't you see? Just be positive, right? We sometimes, maybe in an effort to make them feel lighter, we say things like, it could have been so much more worse, you don't realize, right? Sometimes being judged for expressing their emotions, being seen as weak or negative. And so sometimes what happens is the pretense comes in, right? Pretending to be happy all the time and hiding their true feelings, which happens when we feel that probably we are being judged for a difficult emotion that we are feeling. And that is exactly like the situation of the elephant, right? Where the elephant pretends to do a ritual of receiving money, blessing the tourists, taking the tourists on the back, does everything to make others happy, right? But what it is feeling within is a lot of challenging emotions, right? So then it puts on a pretense to ensure that people around do not judge it, do not make fun of it, do not look at it as weak. So, what are some alternatives? So, when someone's going through a difficult situation, yes, we want to tell them to be positive, right? We want to tell them, hey, whatever, this is life is beautiful, this, that. We want to boost their morale. And in that sense, sometimes we say some things which were in the previous slide, which are not helpful. So, what are some alternatives that we can choose? Some things we can say is, I'm listening. Just letting them know, I'm listening, I'm here, I'm listening. I'm here no matter what you're going through. That must be really hard. What you're going through must be really, really hard. Telling them that sometimes bad things happen. How can I help? How can I be there? What do you want me to do? Right? Letting them know that sometimes failure is a part of life. Happens. We, as much as success is a part of life, failure is a part of life, and it must be making us very, very sad, right? But let's get through this together. And just validating someone's difficult feelings by saying that, yes, your feelings are very valid, right? You don't have to justify why you're feeling a particular way. You don't have to justify why you're not able to feel positive. It's fine. Whatever you're feeling is very, very valid. So, probably these are some alternatives which we can practice with someone, with ourselves also, right? It's not just with someone else, but sometimes we are also very, very harsh to ourselves, and we say things like, how can you do this? And come on, why are you feeling this? And oh, you had to get that, right? We have the tendency to do that when we're chasing something. So, to be compassionate, kind, and offer these non toxic positive alternatives. These are also positive. These are in no way lesser than, saying, buck up, come on, you can do it, and all that. No, in fact, they are more healthy, more organic, and there is compassion and kindness when we offer these alternatives. I'd like to offer this image, especially if you're able to see this slide. The left, or the scribbling on your left, is from my client, right? So when she was going through a difficult emotion, a neurodivergent client, when she was going through a difficult emotion, I said, would you like to use different colors to express what are the difficult emotions you're feeling, right? So she kept saying, I'm feeling sad, but couldn't express what brought about that sadness, right? So because I work with art, we went through a process where I said, okay, choose colors for different feelings that you're feeling that describe this sadness. And as you can see on the left, it's like a scribbled circle, all this. It's like spirals. It's like a wool. And as you see the key there, those are the different feelings that she was experiencing. And all she could say was, I'm feeling sad. But only when we did this exercise, I was able to understand that there was sadness, there was anger, shock, jealousy, loneliness, emptiness, like 8 feelings, all morphed into one word that she called as grief. She wrote it as grief later on, but that she said as sadness. Right? So when someone, imagine if we didn't do this process, right? And someone said, I'm feeling sad. And we say, well, why are you feeling sad? Come on, you don't have to feel sad. And this is what, right? So we go into this whole language of how one should not feel sad, right? But when we sit down and we work with that sadness, we realize that it's not one emotion. It is 8 different emotions for this person that was all morphed into one cotton ball and all tangled and twisted. You can see, right? It's all like all over the place. The image on the right, I've picked up from the internet, which basically talks about the ball of grief. Actually, there is something that exists like a ball of grief. So only after I worked with my client, I went to look for it. And I realized that this is how grief is experienced by most people. So that is an image which is a researched image. And an image that was used in somebody else's research, not mine, which actually says that sadness comes with so many other emotions. If you see the image on the right, it has easily some, I think, 30, 35 words in that image, which to describe grief, to describe sadness, right? So when we expect ourselves to move away from sadness, when we expect ourselves to feel positive, right, we have to understand that we have to work through all those emotions. It may be 20 for some, 30 for some, 5 for some, right? But to know what constitutes our sadness is very, very important. Without that, we will be only working superficially. Yeah, if I feel sad, I should do this. No, when I feel sad, I need to sit down and reflect on that sadness. I need to understand what are the different emotions that constitute my sadness. And if you do it with yourself, as I speak, you would realize, let's do that. Let's just take a minute, right? And think about maybe the sadness that you experienced recently or intensely. And if you were to just think about it for some time and bring up the write down the different emotions that you experienced along with the sadness, what would they be? We could take a minute to do this. If you're on, you could use a pen and paper to just write down, or you could use your keypad to type it out. But what does your ball of sadness look like? Yeah, that's my question to you. If you feel comfortable, you can share it over the chat. you. And it's okay if you don't want to share. Just make a note of it for yourself. And you can do this exercise either now. Thank you for sharing. You see, it's not the same for everyone. Look at the different words that are coming up, and we just think of it as one emotion. It's not easy to lose a loved one, and absolutely guilt is valid. One doesn't understand what to do, and the easiest thing to do is sometimes to blame oneself. Thank you. Thanks for those wonderful shares. And I think when you share and others read it, it's just to understand, look at that, spectrum, right, of sadness. There's hardly any word that's repeated, maybe one or two, but it's just like for each one, it is so different. And we just assume that it's one word, right? It's just sad. Someone's just sad. And then engage in all this, oh come on, feel positive and look at this. This is when I said, what does your ball of sadness look like? It's a range. And unless we work through all of these emotions, right, each one of us, how do we expect ourselves to feel organically positive? Thank you for doing this. And I think this can be a start, as you've recognized a word or two or three, right? To just sit with that word, with each of these words, and reflect in terms of what brings up this hopelessness or helplessness or inadequacy, and to write around it, to journal around it, and to understand this. Really get to know these feelings more, that constitute your ball of sadness. So that brings us to a very interesting question. Why do we avoid sadness? Why do we just bypass it most of the time, right? Because it's one, conditioning. Sometimes we learn from childhood, be happy, put a smile, where's your smile, this, right? So, especially sometimes gender specific statements also, men should not feel sad, right? And even women hear a lot of that. So a lot of this that comes from our cultures, whichever culture we belong to, but most of the cultures pay a lot of attention to looking happy, whether one is happy or not. But to look happy is a huge emphasis. So we begin to, somewhere our brain picks up this message. It's a neuroplasticity. It picks up this message or develops habits of pretense, develops habits of superficial happiness, superficial positivity, because that is acceptance, right? Clearly we get accepted if we can look happy, feel positive, wear that smile, all of that, as a society. So to belong, to feel that we are part of the society, to just ensure these voices that we hear that are part of our conditioning make us pick up those habits, right? And we begin to believe that sadness is bad, it needs to be suppressed. So we don't engage in understanding our own sadness and others' sadness. Experience. Sometimes we may have experienced something so difficult that it must have been a very, very challenging situation for us, and we don't want to experience it again, right? We may not have had the support to come out of it, we may not have had the resources to come out of it, or we may have come out of it after a lot of back and forth and all of that. So we don't want to take ourselves there again. So we say, no, 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 no. Oh my God, anything that even looks like I can make me sad, I'm not getting there. Right? So how are you? I'm fine. How are you doing? I'm doing good. Right? Just works great. So let's just keep doing that. Right? So we don't want to put ourselves through that experience again. And sometimes we don't even engage in it with others, because others' sadness will also make us sad, right? So we don't want to go there. So we don't encourage people speaking about their sadness because we feel that, oh, it's going to make me sad also. So I don't want to experience it. Our own insecurities, sometimes we have some negative beliefs about our self-worth, right? And we don't want to acknowledge that. So our own insecurities, when they are not addressed, we feel that we don't want to get there because that's going to make us sad. Someone had mentioned in the chat comparison, right? We avoid sadness because there's going to be constant comparison. There is no realistic goal setting, and there is always some race that has to be won. And if we sit in this sadness, we will not be able to do that, right? It slows us down. There is a pause. We have to think, we have to reflect, we have to sit with our difficult emotions. That's a waste of time. Others will go away, right? Others will achieve so many things while we will be sitting with this. So we don't want to address it because we feel it will slow us down. We feel it will hold us back. We feel it will take us out of the race, right? Even, I mean, that's also something we hear as children, isn't it? Move on, get going. Whatever is there, just let it be. Focus on your exams, focus on your tests, things like that. Another reason we avoid sadness is physical discomfort. Our neurotransmitters, as much as oxytocin is the happiness hormone, there are other hormones, like I'm going to try and pronounce it, catecholamine, that increase that are produced when we experience sadness, right? And that's a very difficult hormone because obviously it brings down the adrenaline levels, because of which we feel heavy. Our serotonin levels are low. There is less production of dopamine in our brains when we are sad. So this creates physical discomfort. And we feel like, oh, we don't want, we're looking for something that will increase our adrenaline, that will increase our dopamine levels. We don't want to experience that heaviness, that physical heaviness, which is proven that all these neurotransmitters, all these drop when we experience sadness. And I think, when we speak about physical discomfort, it could be like sleep goes for a toss, food goes for a toss, there is fatigue, irritability. We begin to question life and its purpose. So that's why the task, the habit, when we spoke, we said have a purpose, right? Because it's very natural that when one is experiencing a difficult emotion, the first thing we do is, what's the use? What's the point? We get into that cynical cycle. Increased fear of circumstances. What will happen? What will happen? That could lead to anxiety, disassociation, going silent suddenly, unwilling to talk, feeling emotionally numb. So these are things which are not easy to handle. We don't want to see ourselves in these cycles. Maybe we've made a lot of struggle to come out of these cycles. So any indication of going back to that, we're like, no, 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 I don't want to put myself there. Right? So there is a reason why we don't want to handle or recognize difficult emotions. A very valid reason. However, why is it important? Why is it important? If it is so difficult, if it is such a lot of work, if it means like reflecting, pausing and reflecting, if it's probably going to delay me from reaching my goals, why is it important? Because it highlights underlying issues that need to be addressed. And if they're not addressed actively, they will crop up passively, like psychosomatically, right? It helps foster deep connections. It enables one to be authentic in their expression. Being vulnerable is not a sign of weakness, rather a ground for becoming stronger. Many of my clients, when they walk into my office, I tell them, you are the brave person, because when they walk in, they feel like they are the weakest, right? That they have lost in life. But I would say choosing therapy is courage. When you walk in to heal yourself, then that is a sign of courage. So being vulnerable is not a sign of weakness, but it just shows that how strong you are. You want to deal with things, you want to address things. So it is a strength. So I'd like to offer this wheel here, which is called as the feeling wheel, and this is available on the internet. It was designed by a psychologist, and it is used in research. So it is a wheel that has been used and acknowledged. I'd like you to take a good look at the wheel and just maybe place your finger, in the sense, just take, absorb what you're feeling today. Just as you're here in this session, just as you are listening, it may be one more than one thing that you're feeling. But to take a look at the wheel completely and see if you resonate with how you're feeling now, if it has a word for you. Now, if you're not a very word person, vocabulary oriented, language oriented person, go by the color. Just choose a color that's calling out to you as you view it, that is probably describing what you're feeling now. And if you're comfortable, you can either mention the color or the word in the chat. Someone's feeling pink, relaxed, powerful, happy. And this wheel can be used, thank you for your shares. And this wheel, thankful, and this wheel can be beautifully used as a reflection exercise, right? Because whenever we sit down to reflect, what am I feeling? We have just 5 words mostly: happy, sad, surprised, shocked, disappointed. These are the few words we use. We don't go beyond that, to connect to what we are feeling. But a wheel like this can help us actually begin somewhere. It can be a prompt, in terms of words or even colors. So when someone said pink, you could maybe then go to pink and say, okay, which one, right? You can choose your whole range of um, words from there and say, oh, I'm feeling pink. Maybe I'm feeling extravagant, or maybe I'm feeling excited, right? So it'll help you and give you a vocabulary to get in touch with your feeling. You can also use this with someone who you're working with, like a care for whom you're caring, right? Sometimes they may not have the language to express what they're feeling, but you could ask them to place their finger. What are you feeling? Just look at the wheel and place your finger, and from there you can begin a conversation. So it can be a huge conversation starter with yourself and also with someone else when they're running out of words to actually say what they're feeling. A few tips on how to avoid a toxic positive situation. So, though we are talking about staying positive, we don't want to be toxic positive to anyone, right? So, develop an attitude that it's okay to not be okay, and that's also being positive, right? To have the strength to say, it's not okay, right? And I'm okay with it, right? So, and that means you're being positive. To manage negative emotions and not deny them, right? So when we acknowledge those negative emotions, that is positivity. To focus on listening to others and showing support, right? That means you're being positive when you're listening, receiving, comprehending what the person is feeling, and offering support, not solution, not necessarily a solution, just a support, right? And that means you are being positive, right? These are two book suggestions, wonderful books on difficult emotions. The one you see on the left, Grief Entanglements, is more in terms of an academic writing. It has self help, it has some techniques that can help in terms of understanding what sadness is and how one can overcome sadness. So, it is understanding unresolved grief and what you can do about it. It's more like a self help book. The one on the right, which is Me for You, is a novel on second chances. It's about grief and how someone overcomes grief and gives themselves a second chance. So, if you are someone who likes self help books, go for the Grief Entanglements. If you're someone who likes light reads, then go for the novel. This I thought I'd offer both, depending on what you would like to pick up as a reading. So, that brings us to the end of what I wanted to share. So I'm going to stop sharing now. And I'd like to open up the space for any sharing, questions. We have roughly approximately 10 minutes, but that's fine. That's just an approximation. And yes, yes, Manjri, would you like to go?
Ma'am, sometimes people, if they have certain issue or they are feeling sad or emotionally low, sometimes there are suggestions that you should do something entirely different. Basically, distract yourself, like go on trips or do these things. So these things are very contradictory and they are very common nowadays. Like I have seen people who are divorced, but they are celebrating on Facebook, cutting divorce cake and everything. So this is very confusing. So what is your say on this?
I would say, Manjari, that people do what they think best works for them, right? And sometimes we need those short distractions to get away from the difficult situation, but to understand that it's a distraction, right? And that it's important once the distraction is over, once the fantasy comes to an end, like you're back from your trip, you again, what are you back to? You're back to the reality, right? So, yes, as much as a trip may be great, just after a loss or just after you suffer, like you said, divorce or something like that, it's great, wonderful, but also to know that yes, I will come back and address it. So maybe I need to cut off for some time, and that can also be, and as long as it is done with awareness, I think the work can happen anytime.
Ram has his hand raised, Manjri.
Yes. So yes, Ram.
Yeah, thank you very much for that presentation. I think it was very useful. And I am a caregiver for my son who's schizophrenic and all that. And then coming out of that, I mean, he's perfectly fine with medication and high performing and all that, can do a lot of stuff. But he has a lot of anxiety. He seems to think that he is not good enough, that he cannot maintain a career, although he manages to do very well. He still continues to have that. So I tell him it's okay. A few things may happen in life that are not in your control. So I'm not saying that you need to feel great if there is an earthquake, but it's not something that you caused. Okay,
Yes.
so the issue is, what do you cope with it? What do you do next? Okay, so let's leave it there. So my general this thing, I just wanted to validate with you whether that approach is fine. That I tell him that it's okay. I can understand you're not feeling great. Yeah, something bad happened, maybe a job loss or something like that. That's okay. Things happen, and you're not in control of it. But just learn to cope with it, and maybe we'll find a way around it. I mean, just let's go with it. And the other feedback I get from him is that no, I am particularly, life is giving me a bad rap. I've got this mental health issue, and I suffered so much. So my response to that has been that it's not that everyone has a great life. There are challenges for everybody. The issue is that learn to be a little calm. Maybe there are some good things and maybe there are some bad things. So a lot of people tell me, for example, that you had a particularly difficult life. But I tell them no. Also, a lot of good things happened to me. I went to the best colleges in the country. Why did I get chosen? It was just a bit of luck. I also agree. And it was also lucky in many, many ways in my career, in my family, stuff like that. Okay, a few bad things happened. I had a lot of series of losses of family members, but that's okay. So I told him similarly, that's fine. You'll find a way. And all you need to be in life is you need to be a good person. So long as you're that, forget about everything. So is that Is that in line with some of the things that you said? I don't want to give a false
Yeah.
sense of happiness.
Yes, yes. I think I'm sure the reason you're asking me this question is that you would like to reflect on what you've been doing, right? And otherwise,
Yes.
this question would not come. So I think that itself means that you'd probably want to reflect and understand if some changes need to be made. And I think it's wonderful the way you're motivating and you're, standing by your son and letting him know the reality of the situation, right? Like life is hard, life is difficult, everybody has challenges. And I think all that is great. And maybe here on, just try and understand, okay, what would he have to say about it in terms of just sometimes staying with that feeling of, yes, it is difficult for him, as much as it could be difficult for everyone else, but on that day he feels it is challenging. On that day he feels that his mental health has been very, very challenging for him, right? So, like I said, to sometimes stay with that and say, okay, I'm listening, is also important.
Yeah.
Vikramji, you have a question?
Yeah, I have a question. Sorry. How does positive psychology, as per Dr. Martin Seligman, figure in the scheme of things? For example, things like his concept of ABCD, adversity, belief, consequences, and disputation, energization, and all that. So that is a different way of looking at it, in which you deny the negative part of it, and you try and replace your negative beliefs with a positive belief in changing the outcome and things like that. So how does that figure into
I
it?
don't think it's very different. It's just that he has a model. The ABCD is a model. But if you look at the model too, it begins with adversity, right? So to really understand what is the adversity, what is the situation, what is the reality, and only then move past it, right? So positive psychology is a branch of cognitive psychology which talks about step 1, step 2, step 3. Yes, so it has a model around it, but it begins with recognizing the reality of the situation. And even when he takes us through the exercise, it talks about, I mean, I've done the ABCD model. It says, list what is your belief in that situation, and recognizing that belief is very, very important.
Okay.
What is your negative belief in that adversity, in that situation of adversity? And
Okay.
then work, contradict it.
Okay. The second question, leading to what Sir was talking about, his child with schizophrenia, is that I mean, too much of negative introspection will activate the triggers again of a sensitive person. So I think maybe avoided for a person who has who has a sensitivity rather.
Absolutely. I think we have to go with them. Like it cannot be our agenda, right?
Right.
Like stay with the negative. If they want to move, then we move with them, right? But however, the point is, if they would like to stay, then we stay with it. Like we don't say, now get up and move.
Okay.
So it has to be them centric.
Right. Thank you.
Rohan? Rohan, would you like to say something? You have your hand raised. Rohan, are you there? Yes, Swami. Rohan seems to have some difficulty with connection.
Oh, yeah. Rohan, we can't hear you. Yes. Do you want to mention your question on the chat then? Okay. Yes. Rohan is typing it out, and so we can take. Yes, we are moving on to the next question. Thank you. Yes, Mr. Swami.
Yeah, ma'am, this is Rama Swaminathan. I am Shubhanti. My husband is Shubhankar. This question is related to someone who is related to me. Yeah, this person has had breakdowns, and now that concerned person is, coming back to normal after a year of treatment with medication and other things. But he is moving very slowly towards progress. So my concern, because I'm very close to that person, is I keep giving ideas for that person to come out of his safe zone So is it right on my part to, keep thinking and advising the concerned person? What would you advocate?
I would say any progress is good, right? Like I said, when we spoke about, when I shared the slides, I said it's this, even this neuroplasticity is very different for someone with neurodivergence, right? So,
Sorry, get back to me on neurodivergence. What does it mean?
oh, I mean, so when we say neurodivergence, it's anyone with a special need.
Okay, yeah,
Could be from the spectrum of autism to schizophrenia to
bipolar.
yeah, yes, right. So
Yeah,
when the thinking process is slightly different from
yeah,
the neurotypical. So yes, so we stay with their progress, and though it may seem like a slow progress to us, it can be a big step for them. So I would say, if possible, along with the advice and along with what you would like for them to, maybe you're giving them a different picture, which may be helpful, to also offer appreciation for the progress made, and sometimes to leave it at that, to sometimes just leave it at the appreciation for the progress made
yeah,
without a word of advice, and
yeah,
sometimes to bring in the advice.
yeah. Actually, if I may go further, both of us have the same problem. Um, and the person in concern lost his parents, both of them, to tragically, one to COVID, the other the next year on with cancer. So it has been very tough time for the concerned person. He could not do the cremation also. So all this had been a terrible shock for the person. So I being very close to him, and since my husband is also, my support giver, so we really try to handle it. His wife has been very strong under the circumstances. She has done her best. In fact, my psychiatrist and his psychiatrist, they say, Rama, just leave it alone. Let them fall and come to you for help. Don't go, thrust your help on them. So that's her advice under the circumstances.
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for sharing. So we have Rohan's question, and then we go to Rujita. Could you talk a little about how these techniques can differ between adults versus teenagers versus children, especially in areas of anxiety and self harm? Okay, I think that's very broad, Rohan, because definitely they differ, right? Uh, what I have been focusing on is adults, because I know that we are all adults here. We would be adults, so all that I have mentioned on the slides, and may apply even to young adults. Like I would say between 15 and 18. Right? But with children below.
Uh, I think.
Anilji, could you go on mute? There's some
Yeah. So I would say to for the a population below 15, I think this has to be done very, very differently. Right. So yes, and that's a very broad spectrum in terms of how it is done. But if you are dealing with teenagers, if you're dealing with children, then of course you can apply most of what we've been speaking today in terms of, staying with them, understanding their emotions, and all of that. So, yes. Yes, Rujita, please go ahead with your question.
Uh, Good evening, ma'am. Your session was very enlightening.
Thank you.
Actually, I had a habit of suppressing my feelings and emotions, but recently, with by reading some good books and all, I was trying to identify my feelings and try to figure out how to deal with them than suppressing them. And your session was very helpful for me. I was searching means how to identify different emotions and how to categorize them. And my question for you, ma'am, is how to identify our own capacity.
Well, that is again a process. I don't think I can answer it in one word, but you have many tools, psychometric tools. You can have some self-awareness tools. There is something which we call as the 16 personality test. I'm just mentioning it in the chat. You can take a look at it on the internet, and I think the basic is free, and then if you want to go deeper into it, you have to pay. So these are certain tools that help us to identify our strengths and weaknesses, our traits, and help us understand, and at least relate to a very great extent to what our potential is. You're welcome. I think that was the maximum number of questions we've taken. I think everyone's questions here.
And we're back on time. And thank you so much. It was very enlightening, and I think we all will walk away with some insights. And I would like to see you here again at some point in time with a different topic, perhaps.
Sure.
And I thank all of us, thank all of you. And we use the first Wednesday of every month for a guest speaker going forward. So just let everybody know we'll be posting again. And the speaker and the topic will be shared in the group. And this is open, as all can see, this is open to all. And well, Eklavya wishes you all the best, and hopefully, if you can note down, I think the chats are deleted after the session, after the meeting, it gets deleted. So if there's any relevant information you'd like to note down, please do note it down right now. Okay. Anita, you want to say anything in closing?
We have someone whose hand is raised. Krishnan, if you'd like to.
Yeah, Krishna Sundaresh. Yes, yes. Yes, Krishna sir.
We can't hear you if you're speaking.
Krishnan sir, you have to unmute yourself. We can't hear you. If you want.
Krishna sir, you'll have to unmute yourself. Unmute. Microphone.
You want to say something? Want to talk? Yeah, yeah. No, but he can ask it also. Of this, he will not get it. Ganesh. Unmute. So.
Ma'am, somebody wants to ask here that if they send you the request, you could be called for addressing a Rotary here in Chennai.
Yeah, sure. That would be definitely. That would be great. You can let me.
Your details from Ganesh.
Yes, you can.
Ganesh, Krishnan, that's my brother. He has raised his hand. He wants to ask something.
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Krishnan. Go ahead. Please unmute your mic and then you'll be able to speak. Yes.
Hello?
Yes, go ahead.
By mistake, my hand got raised.
Oh.
Okay. That was a light moment at the end of the session.
You don't want to ask anything, Krishnan?
No, no, no.
Okay, okay.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Anilji, perhaps a few words in closing before we.
Ganeshji, Manjeri will do that.
Okay.
Okay. Uh, Thank you, Hemalatha madam, for this wonderful session. I feel the first step towards positive thinking is clarity, which you have given us. How to address or how to think about our emotions. Thank you so much. We definitely want to have another session with you. This program was organized by Eklavya Foundation for Mental Health Pune. If you want to connect with us, those all the participants who wants to connect with us, there is a information given in chat box. And thank you for your wonderful session and wonderful participation. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you, Manjari,
Thank
and I'd like to sincerely thank each one of you for being here and for participating so wholeheartedly in the questions and sharing with me. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, ma'am.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Thank
ma'am.
you. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you,
Anil.
ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.